How's everybody doing today? Today I just wanted to do a little video that goes over methods. Now a method really is just a place where you can put your code. If you've got code that is going to be reused throughout your program at different times, sometimes it makes more sense instead of putting it behind a button, you can put it behind a method. This program is available to you on download from the Angel link. It's called Future Value Method. I'm actually going to start out with a simpler method and then show you the future value one soon. Here's a little method I've created. Real simple. It's called concat my name. And what it's going to do is just concatenate my first name and my last name. Now, some things about methods. This is called a modifier. It can be public or private. If it's private, then this method can only be called from other methods or buttons within its class. If it's public, it can be called from methods or buttons outside its class. I've got the word string here. What that means is this method actually returns a value. And if a method returns a value, you have to specify the type of value that it does return. If your method does not return a value, you're going to use the word void. Void means a method doesn't return a value. So I've got my modifier is private. String tells me what type of variable this method returns. This is my method name. I just called it concat my name. And then in here you have your parameters. Now parameters are just information that you have to pass your method in order to make it work. Here, if I'm going to concatenate my first name and my last name, I've got to pass it my first name and my last name. So I have two parameters here. And I have to designate the type of information that these parameters are. These are string. So you might notice I'm hardly into this and I've already got an error. So why am I getting an error? Well, since I've told it that it returns a string and it doesn't see any return function down here, it's giving me that error. As soon as I add the code to this function and I have a return function, it'll alrighty. I've added the code I need inside my function, and you notice this error did go away. So I declared a variable called full name, and I just said it's first name plus last name. So it's going to take whatever it gets passed for my first name, concatenate it with whatever it gets passed with my last name, and then it's got return full name. So when this method gets called, it's going to return the value of full name. Now what I wanted to do is just show you the code that actually calls the method. This is just inside a little button that I have. So again, my method is called concat my name. I've got two pieces of information, Chris and Ford. It's going to pass them down to my method. So Chris is going to go down to first name because it's the first piece of information. Ford is going to go down to last name. My method is going to concatenate these, and then it returns full name. So the full name gets put back to my method, and since I set my method equal to a text box, it'll put that value into the text box. If I run it, I hit my button and it says okay, it works. Now I could use variables in here instead of just quoted text. I could use another text box, I could use labels, I could use input boxes. Doesn't matter. As long as what I give it is string of the type string, it's happy and it'll work. If I try to instead say give this thing a number, it doesn't like it. It's saying no, it's got to be string. So anyhow, the next thing I wanted to show you is a function that calculates future value. And this one's a tiny bit more complicated. It's got 3 parameters, but not much more complicated. So I wanted to go over that now. Okay, you're going to see a lot of the same words used, kind of boilerplating things. My modifier for this one is private. Again, I've got double here, which indicates that this method is going to return a variable that's of the double type. I called it future value. Now I've got three parameters that I need to pass this method in order to use it. Future value, if you make an investment in a bank for a certain number of years at a certain interest rate, so let's say you invested $1,000 in a bank for 5 years at 8%. What the future value formula does is it will calculate how much money you'll have at the end of that 5 years. So this is the formula to do it. I declared a variable, double variable called f value. If you take your amount invested and you multiply it by 1 plus your interest rate raised to the number of years, that's what this little math power function is doing, you get your future value. So this is just going to return future value. Next thing I wanted to do is just show you the code that calls this future value function. I put this in a little button. So again, my function name is future value. I set this equal to a variable, a double variable. When I call my function, I have to give it three pieces of information in the correct order. I have to give it the amount invested, that's going to get passed down here, my interest rate, which gets passed down here, and my number of years. So this is saying if I took $1,000, invested it for 10 years, at 3%, how much do I get? So this gets passed down. This line of code calculates the future value. This line returns it, and it ends up in the text box. If I run this one, I hit calculate future value, then it says, oh, okay, $1,000, 3% for 10 years, I would get $1,343.91. So, anyhow, hopefully this gives you an idea how to set up a function, a little bit about what the keywords and functions mean. Actually, I use function and method a lot interchangeably. If a method returns a value, a lot of times it's referred to as a function. So if you hear me mixing those two terms together, then that's why. Anyhow, hopefully this video was helpful. We'll see you next time.